Hello and welcome back to Gubb Farm. I'm in floods a lot and I'm in the process of extending the Coppicing forest that I started last year. And I've learned a very important lesson I'm going to share with you in this video, and that is the choice of cutting to maximise your chances of the trees taking. I took two different types of cuttings last year. One was from kind of branches coming off an established mature tree, and the second were cuttings that came off a tree that was damaged. It was broken over, and I took the water sprout cuttings. It's the growth that the tree puts out as it attempts to survive, and you get it after you've pollarded the tree or coppiced the tree. So I did one row of those water sprouts because I ran out of branches from the established trees, and about 90% of them have taken, and about only 25% of the cuttings off the mature tree have taken. And if I look closely at the water sprouts, the 1-2 year old growth, if you look closely you see that there's lots of buds on it, and I think those buds then establish roots in the ground, and there's got lots of hormones, and it's just they take very well. So here we have an example of a willow where it got damaged and then it sent up lots of vertical branches, and if you look closely at them, they've just got lots of little buds on them. So last year I did one row with cuttings from this tree and they all took. I also tried cuttings off mature branches, and they had a very low success rate. So you don't see as many buds on them. Most of them are is calloused over the right word, but they're all hardened off. So it looks like the best material for establishing a coppicing forest is this new growth. So I think the optimum age of the new growth is 1 to 2 years. I think after that it starts to harden up, and all the new willow growth, it's kind of got an orangey tinge to it, so you can kind of tell by looking at it if it's the right thing. But ultimately it looks like you want growth that has lots of fresh new buds on it. And it's quite easy to tell what trees took and what didn't. If you pull on a tree that's been in the ground and it's taken successfully, it doesn't want to come out. So growth that hasn't taken just comes straight out of the ground. So it didn't establish any real roots off the branch, off the cutting. So the moral of the story is take lots of new growth as your source for cuttings. Now, by good fortune, in March last year I coppiced this hedgerow. My intention at the time was to thicken it all up, so lots of growth, lots of regrowth, which I could then produce or turn into woodchip. But there's been a slight change of plan. So since I've realised that that new growth that comes up after coppicing or pollarding is the best, I'm walking my way through these trees now, taking lots of cuttings. So I've taken about 2,000 cuttings off this hedgerow so far, and I think by the time I'm finished I should probably have about 4,000 cuttings in the ground. So I'll have about then just over an acre planted. I'm in Quadrophenia. I'm just going to the willow tree that I pollarded 2 years ago, and I'm going to take the new growth off it for propagating in the coppicing forest. So I've cut back about 80% of the tree. So I'm then breaking the bushes down, or the branches down, to about 40-50 centimetre lengths. Because I'm running out of cuttings, I'm also using these thinner pieces. I'm not sure how well they're going to do, but sure, we'll find out next year. So what I'm looking for in any of the cuttings is I'm looking for signs of new growth, buds breaking through, because if you get a couple of them below the ground, they should root. I learned last year, if you didn't cut them back, if you left them too long, the tops die. So I'm trying to keep them about, as I said, 40-50 centimetres long. And I think the bigger pieces tend to do better because they have more stored energy in them. So I have less confidence in these small branches, but some of the bigger ones I'm using. As I mentioned, I'm planting about 3,000 or 3,000 to 4,000 cuttings, and that's requiring a lot of material. So we now have about 200 cuttings from that one tree that was pollarded 2 years ago. So one tree will hopefully become a couple of hundred. So I'm planting these about a metre apart, and I'm burying them down to cover 2 or 3 buds. Key thing as well to remember is make sure the buds are pointing upwards. So out of this acre that I'm planting, my hope is that over a 6-year cycle I can remove about 12 tonne of wood chip. So I'll break that down into every other year. I'll try to take about 4 tonne off it. I have 2,100 trees, and the goal is to, on a biannual basis, every 2 years, to put down around 2 kilo of wood chip around the trees, just as a source of ongoing nutrient, and just to keep all the soil biology fired up. I think from what I've read, it should be achievable. I've read about people getting about 30 tonne per hectare, so that's about 10 to 15 tonne per acre. This ground is really well suited to willow, and as you can see from that hedgerow that we coppiced last year, it just grows rampantly. So I hope to get into the upper end of what can be expected in terms of yield. It's been 7 months since we planted the cuttings. It's now mid-August. I'm going to take a walk over. I'm quite interested to see how well the thin cuttings did versus the thick cuttings. Did they both take as well, and how strong is the growth? So we'll take a walk over and have a look. As you can see, I haven't been doing a lot of mowing, and there's a good reason for that. I started the year mowing around the trees, but I've been doing a lot of research, studying various research papers on this. And it turns out mowing may not be the best orchard flow management practice. So we'll get into that in the next video, but there's a good reason why I've left it uncut. This is amazing. Everywhere I look, there's trees. There's just trees everywhere. Without any shadow of doubt, this has worked. Yeah, there's trees everywhere. Fat, thin, no matter what sort of cutting that went into the ground, it's taken. So without any hesitation, you know, if you want to establish a coppicing forest from willow or sallie, the strategy is quite simple. Year one, knock back your target trees that you want to take the cuttings from. So pollard them. On the second year, on that regrowth, take that regrowth and cut it into strips of about 30, 40, maybe 40 to 50 centimeters. Get at least 2 buds into the ground, and yeah, you want that water sprout growth to come straight up after the tree's been knocked back. And it's easily 95% plus have taken. I think I've seen one, I'm not even sure if it was a willow cutting, but the worst is I've seen one cutting that hasn't taken so far. So yeah, at least 95% success rate on this, and that is startling compared to last year. Last year I just took cuttings, as I said earlier on, I just took cuttings off mature trees and stuck them in the ground, but they didn't have the buds to form the roots, I think, and it was very low success rate, about 25%. So to go from 25% to 95% is great, because I was in here for the best part of a week planting these cuttings, and it's great to see them taking. So hopefully I've secured a decent supply of wood chip on the farm now, and probably not enough, but it's a good step in the right direction. What's also very interesting to note is the amount of regrowth on this hedge that I took the cuttings from. I took about 80% of the cuttings from it, and it's just thick with branches and leaves. They seem to be very hardy, they respond very well to being coppiced, and yeah, fingers crossed this is working out well. So until next time, good luck.